For years, Sea of Thieves players have been begging for a bounty system in-game, where pirates can be targeted based on how much loot they're carrying or how long it's been since they've sunk. Well, we still don't have an official system, but if you're daring enough, you can do it yourself. And so this whole session, I've been stacking loot, world event after world event, while also flying the Reaper's Mark flag, revealing myself to anyone who is paying attention to their map table. And I'm not going to be selling any of my loot earned until I manage to turn in a chest of fortune. I have made myself the most wanted player on this Sea of Thieves server, and either I escape with my fortune intact, or someone else will earn the bounty. Just under 3 hours in, and we finally spot our Fort of Fortune. On my ship right now are the loot contents of 2 skeleton forts, an Ashen Winds, and a Ghost Fleet, as well as 2 skeleton ships and a Reaper's Bounty chest taken from a shipwreck. All told, if we manage to pull this off, we're looking at a 6-figure take easy. Keelhaul Fort is one of my favorites to get an event at because of the great line of sight to the rest of the map. Between waves, I always check the horizon, and this time, I spotted an incoming brig, though I had a bit of time. When it was closer, it was time to go to work. First, I moved the stronghold keg from the Skeleton Fort world event I did to the nearby skeleton tower. Then, as I set the sloop sailing off as a distraction, I took my storage crate to the tower as well, and while my sloop was moving safely away, I had a bit of fun with the brig, with not one, but 2 different cannon emplacements. I wasn't going to be able to sink them, but I wanted to make them nervous. In my opinion, it's important to keep your opponent off balance, especially if you're numerically the underdog. If your opponent is unsure about what the next move is, you have the advantage. That's why I used hit and run tactics here and even went for a board, though that didn't work. I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect either. I whiffed plenty of shots, including my precious phantom cannonballs from the Ghost Fleet event I did. I feel like I made up for it though by hitting both my Wraith Ball shots though. Eventually, it came down to a broadside slugfest. I had the advantage of a better line of sight, so I hammered into the brig, going for a board while one of their masts were down. First, I took down the pirate on the top deck, before chasing after the second below and catching the third one as they spawned back in. The sound of an exploding hull tells me they've scuttled. I won! Or at least, I thought I did. But I had been hearing some cannon shots in the background while I was on the brig, and it turns out those cannon shots were aimed at my ship. And just like that, we were sunk as well. We had aggroed a skeleton sloop, of all things. But what to do? The loot was still viable, and no one was around to claim it. I decided to swim back to the fort. I knew there was a rowboat there. Maybe I could collect it all back up. Seeing another sloop parked at the event though, I needed to make a quick and explosive detour. I don't know where the sloop came from, but I was not having any of it. I was rowing the boat back to the loot pile when I noticed a mermaid in the water that definitely was not mine. Then a shot rang out. It seemed that someone from that sloop had made their way over to the loot pile anticipating my return. Well, they couldn't have it. I made sure of that. Unfortunately, that explosion also took out my rowboat. I was left with no other option than to mermaid back and hope my ship wasn't across the map. A stroke of luck, and probably due to sinking to an NPC, I was practically next door over at Sailor's Bounty. A quick sail, and we were at our loot pile and harpooning everything back on board. I was back in business. Returning back to the event, I scanned the island for mermaids and didn't see anything. It was finally time to take this fort down. After a few more waves, it was just down to Red Ruth, and I already had a plan for her. Using my ship's cannons, we were able to quickly put her out of commission and defeat the Fort of Fortune. I quickly grabbed the fort key, but before opening the door, checked the horizon and saw an incoming sloop. Knowing better, I went straight back to my ship, hid the key in the middle of the loot pile already on board, and sailed her off. Once again, this cannon tower came in handy. I assumed the sloop crew thought the door was already going to be open, and that's why they parked the ship. that is not something I would recommend to viewers. I had sunk the sloop from the tower, but I hadn't heard any deaths from one balls, so I was nervous. I parked my ship a bit of a ways away and cannoned over to the fort. I saw a mermaid present in their supplies, so I decided to try and go tuck hunting. It's not my strong suit, but I was not going to let someone else snatch this away from me. Not finding anyone, I mermaided back to my ship to find that sloop I had sunk returning. I tried to one-ball the crew, but I got too ambitious and let a boarder onto the ship. Then I panicked and got blundered in the face. By the time I had respawned, the ship was a second or two away from sinking. By sheer luck of the rare gods, my opponent had jumped off ship thinking I was done for and they needed to recover their own. But we managed to pull out the repairs and they, as you can tell here, did not. 2-0 us. It was time to pop the door open, blow the kegs, and grab the precious chest of fortune. Now that we had this, we could finally sell everything. But I wanted more. So I spent as much time as I could grabbing loot until I saw, yep, you guessed it, that same sloop on the horizon coming back for more. So I harpooned what I could onto a rowboat, got that rowboat to the ship, and made a break for Port Merrick. Keeping a bit of distance from the sloop, I jumped off with the chest and sold it to the sovereigns, taking a few pot shots from Port Merrick's towers for the first time. Then, in the midst of a foggy battle not too far from Plunder Valley, I caught the crew unawares with a board. Killing them both, I found a keg on their ship and absolutely put it to good use. They were done, and we were home free. I returned back to Port Merrick and went through the next half hour selling all the treasure I had accumulated, lost, and then reacquired. This was the most action-filled adventure I had had on the seas outside of an hourglass battle in ages. I was literally sweating in reality as I was turning everything in. But the feeling of being able to secure this bag against multiple crews and repeated attempts at thievery was something that is indescribable. That's why I hope I've done the story justice and telling it to you all here. And of course, we still had our Reaper's Mark flag up at the end of the session. So who knows? Maybe next time if you see a Reaper's Mark flag on the server, you might want to go take a closer look. It might just be me. Until next time, this is Jon Bardcore signing off, saying so long and take care.